I like the little rules discussion. There was a good little kind of back and forth revolving around some gray area type stuff involving Keith Poche, and it was we've discussed it on the show before. Those not familiar, it was kind of accessing water and how we got into it, and it's not the first real case of that happening where there was some question. As an angler, when you read the rules yourself, how do you identify what's worth pushing? Like, is this worth me potentially being DQ'd from this tournament? Am I going to gain that much of a benefit from whatever this maneuver is? How do you balance that out in your
I think
head?
I think that's how you raised and your moral compass as a human being. I think I've met people that would rather do things dishonest, not just in fishing, but do things dishonest in life and then pray for forgiveness instead of saying, "Hey, I want to pray to make the right decision and hope I get it right." I think that's how you raise. Everybody can read the rules, and then certain people read the rules and say, "Hey, there's a glitch right here. I can do this," and I beat the system. That's the human in you. And I talked to an angler. I seen him up at St. Clair, and I was like, "Hey, man, how was all that going over at the MLF?" And he said, "Well," he said, "we had a gray area in the rule." I said, "No, you didn't. You had a gray area in the morality of a few guys who broke it. Don't hand me that you had a gray area, because see, there was about 38 of y'all that didn't have no problem with the gray area. Gray area. So when people say, 'Oh, I like to live in the gray area,' that's on you. I just don't want to be there, man. I want to be. I don't want to do nothing like that. I'm not saying it because somebody said, "You trying to say you've never done anything wrong in a tournament?" Hell no. I've run no wake zones. I've done stuff. Didn't mean to. Looked up in the pouring rainstorm and went, "Good God, that was a no wake buoy. I've screwed up." But I've never left my house with the intention to push the rule and break it and to be in the gray area. It just sucks that we're seeing that more and more. And it sucks that Keith took that. Like, he come at me like, "Oh, dude, I'm just reading the rules off, bro. You had your speech. You told everybody what you didn't do. I'm just reading the rules. It got nothing to do personally against you." He took it that way, and I don't really care. I really don't. But it's the rules. I don't understand about if it's written down how hard it is. And I did Dave Mercer's podcast, and I told him, I said, the rule kind of pertains to, I had to take my boat out one time to get it fixed. I got DQ because my boat went up on dry ground. And the first guy, he's just typing with double fingers over here. Okay, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. It's got nothing to do with this great angler Keith Poche. Like, it's the exact rule, bro. But if you don't like the rules, go fish a tournament that don't have no rules. You're the guy typing. Go fish a tournament. Go do that. But I'm like, it's the same rule. If you put your boat on dry ground and re-enter it in a bass tournament, you have left tournament waters and re-entered.
Yep.
You have to be restarted by a tournament record.
There's a video Todd Castledine did right about that same time, and he basically described the rule. He said there's two types of people that read the rules to make sure they don't break them, and people that read the rules to figure out how to get around them. And there's an intent with that.
Yep. I've had even the tournament officials tell me that the guys that seem to do this know the rules better, like finding a way around it.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you stop that? Like, where do you go? Like, MLF's in this whole deal right now, and I'm like, I don't know what the outcome is.
Yeah, that's the question. Is what should the goal of a rule set be for a tournament?
Simple, clear, and black and white. And if you break it, Chuck Norris kicks your mama in the shin.
we had situations similar to that, and we actually last year kind of pushed for this big rule revision because there was so much kind of gray area stuff happening in these big tournaments. And big tournaments for us, paying out 10 grand or so for a kayak tournament, which is pretty decent compared to where we came from,
Right,
6-7 years ago. But as the money gets bigger, it seemed like people were just pushing further and further, trying to, used to, you could launch from anywhere that was public access. So that became this game of like, what's technically public access? Can I rappel off this bridge? Can I jump off a cliff? As long as, it just got to the point to where they had to cut it back and say, here's approved launches. You can only launch, basically go as far as you want to, but cut out the questionable, shady stuff, because at 4 a.m, who's going to be out on that back road and see you if you're in that gray area? There's a lot more opportunity, I felt like, for people to kind of skirt the edge.
That goes on in bass fishing than people will ever know on all different tournament trails. There's a lot more gray area stuff that happens, and it's frustrating because we make rule after rule after rule, and we have a new rule on top of a new rule on top of a new rule on top of a new rule. We had to make a new rule because that new rule fell through on the new rule. How about let's make some punishments?
Yeah.
You know, I'm the guy that everybody's talking about gun laws, gun laws, gun laws. We have 2,100 gun laws on the books in America. How about we change the punishment? Huh? Let's get Congress and let me go to Congress. How about I don't change the law? How about if you get caught stealing a weapon, it's a mandatory 10 years. They said, we don't have anywhere to put you. We'll tie you to a tree. I don't care. I don't care. You see, that's the problem is we're not punishing the people that get caught with the guns. It's like, why are we doing this? Why do we need another law? And I would argue with Bass and MLF or any organization said, we don't need more rules. You need more enforcement and simplifying your own rules. And then tell everybody, if you push these rules, I'm going to favor of the organization. I'm not going to have any gray area. If you push this rule, because I can go through the Bass rule and read rules and tell you exactly why and who they were written for. It would blow your mind. I could write them. I know
we could do that too, Ryan. We could do that too.
Yeah, I mean, I know the David Dudley rule, the Randy Blockett rule, the Randy Blockett rule, the Randy Blockett. Did I mention Randy Blockett?
Live scope.
Like, I hate live scope. Randy Blockett's got like 3 rules written about him for digging out a duck refuge, jumping over stuff. Like, it's all about him for cutting trees down, removing trees. Like, why? Why didn't we just say, no, we didn't like that, bro. You can go home and study the rules. You're DQ'd. Like, why?
What rules? I mean, that's another question. You mentioned DQ'd. What rules do they, and how do they determine these punishments where it's like some of them, if you continually get information on lakes and stuff, you get fined? Like in my opinion, getting information, especially from a local that's fishing all the time or a guide that's on the lake or something, I mean, that's one of the biggest advantages that you can have going into a fishing tournament. Not necessarily you can't catch another man's fish. I got it. But hey, there's a mega school sitting out on this this point right here. All right, well, here's 20. Pay me 20 grand and we're going to let it slide this time. How does that work?
Now, people tell you that all the time. You can't catch another man's fish. I said, bull crap.
Let me try.
Take me to yours. I'll show you that that's a lie, bro. Because I'll kill every one of them. That's like saying you can't kill another man's deer, kill every one of them. That's a lie. You, with the modern technology and a great fisherman, if he gets information, Carl Jockerson made the best analogy I've ever heard about this because him and I spent a lot of time together. He loves MMA fighting, and he goes, dude, he said, in MMA, he said, when they started testing for steroids bigger than they ever have, he said all the championship belts changed overnight. The whole sport changed. And he said, I view information as the steroids of bass fishing. He said, if a guy gets a little bit of information, it's like taking steroids in MMA because you get a head start and you're hard to catch. He said, you ain't got to get the mother load of information, just enough that you could save a day of practice. And I'm like, that's a pretty good analogy.
You know, the greatest thing about kayak fishing as we continue to grow and these tournaments get bigger and bigger and people are, you know, trying to make a living doing this thing, there's no information rules. I mean, you can't pay a guide, but as far as information goes, you're wide open, you know, up until the tournament itself. You can't solicit information. How crazy is that?
It's better for you guys because in our sport, I was around when we had a no off limits, then a 28-day off limits, then a 30-day off limits. Then we went to the 1 year off limits. And then it was, you know how many people has ever been DQ'd in a BAS event because of the information rule? 1. In a year. So like it doesn't help us. The 30-day off limits, I believe, is really strict because you can set the polygraph up around that 30-day off limits and say inside it. Because the first thing they'll tell you is we can't police a 1 year off limits. Then why do we have it?
Right.
And then you have a guy say, well, the guys who's got the biggest following, they're going to get all the help. Some of them getting it anyway. They don't care. So like, but if everybody gets help, it dilutes it. And you like, I just want to tell them, I'm like, I've seen this. I've been around a long time. If everybody can call every Tom, Dick, and Harry on Lake Champlain, there's only so much chili you can put in a soup and you can't taste it. And that's what happens. Everybody gets the help. They fish on top of each other. They sabotage each other, and it's back to natural fishing. Yep. But if only 7 or 8 guys get help, the other 94 guys want to be honest, that's where you see things flip upside down.
we've got a bunch of questions from folks in the chat. I want to start getting to some of those. This is kind of the elephant in the room, Ryan, that I was going to ask right off the bat, which is, let me pull this up right here. Where'd it go? There it is. The question of the night from Jason Willis on Facebook. This was asked about 10 times. Is G going to cross over at any point and compete one of these leading kayak trails? Inquiring minds want to know. I know Ryan's been talking to you about getting a few kayaks on board. Greg DePalma from the Elites is over there cashing checks in the kayak side. Could we ever see Gerald Swindle in a kayak tournament?
All right, my sound messed up, but I seen the question. The guy was asking, do I ever see myself crossing over and fishing a kayak tournament? Absolutely. Now, I might not fish out of one like